Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the World Cup show. We're 3 days away from that opening game at the World Cup. It's a huge one that we're going to go into France, New Zealand to open the game, the tournament on Friday. It's going to be a massive one and really looking forward to it. So yeah, let's get right into it. This is episode 2. If you saw episode 1, you'll understand what it's about. Just a quick recap for those who don't. Just basically wrapping up the news, interesting snippets and everything surrounding the World Cup, and I'll be doing them about 2 to 3 times a week, perhaps even more if it warrants it. But yeah, for now I'm going to try and do that because obviously we all have work schedules and trying to get stuff done at the same time. And you'd rather put out a decent product rather than rush everything every day. There won't be any match footage on this. I explained why in the last video. Obviously, there's copyright issues there, but this will be a roundup of the news over at the World Cup. So let's dive right in. We've had a bunch of World Cup welcomes. All the teams have arrived now. And a bunch of them are starting kicking off their preparations. A lot of them have gone into their host cities, and it's customary for the host city to give a big welcome. There's a bit of a formal sort of capping ceremony, and the teams quite enjoy it. It's a nice start to the World Cup, and the Springboks had theirs in Toulon. So here's a quick review of what happened when they went to Toulon. It was a good reminder to see just how popular some of the Springboks are. You look at a guy like Sia Kolisi, and if you watch here, you'll see how he was sort of mobbed by supporters. And Hendrik Cronje, my colleague who shot this video, said he was probably the most popular guy at the function. So Sia is obviously still extremely popular. Dwayne Vermeulen, Cheslin Colby, obviously both of them played for Toulon as well. So they'll also be very popular for the crowds as well.
Merci. Rappelle-toi. Tu te rappelles un peu les signatures?
Porte claire.
Il n'est pas trop.
Then in terms of bizarre welcomes, I suppose the interesting ones were this one from Chile. It just shows how inclusive the French are and how they try and going out their way to make all teams feel at home in their cities, and it's great to see. This one from Chile was really, really something to behold. Wales, of course, took theirs to another level, the typical Welsh spirit, singing to their fans. And Even Dan Bigger speaking a bit of French, and I know that's something that, especially in France, if you can speak French, it goes a long way in your team profile.
Premièrement, c'est le bon moment pour tout le monde à être ici ce soir. C'est le bon moment pour chaque joueur à jouer dans le Coupe du Monde.
Then those who watched episode 1 will know the Irish team did the Viking clap, the Icelandic soccer teams clap with the crowd, the 12,000 people that turned up to see them. And the quote of the day goes to former Scottish lock Jim Hamilton, who had this to say: the last team that did the Viking clap was out at the quarterfinals. Well, I'm not sure Irish fans will want to know that, seeing as they've never got past the quarterfinal in any World Cup, but they are ranked number 1 in the world at the moment. So, yeah, that's the quote of the day. Quite an interesting one. So let's get down to the news and what's been happening off the field and just getting ready for the games. And I think the biggest story of the moment is the French one of convicted racist, I'm just going to say his name, Bastien Chaleroux, who I must admit I haven't really followed his career, but he was called up when Paul Willemse was ruled out of the squad. 31-year-old who was convicted for a racist attack a couple of years ago, where he got a 6-month suspended sentence. Now, there's a big outcry in France. Should he be involved in the French team? Obviously, the French Rugby Union and Fabien Galtier believe he should be there on rugby grounds. But obviously his past is coming back to haunt him. There's been a bunch of people saying that he should be, a lot of politicians chiming in France. And Thierry Dusautois also sort of called on him to be removed as such. Technically, I suppose, I don't want to get too much into the details of that, but technically he doesn't have to be removed, but you have to ask yourself what sort of distraction this is to the French team. This is typical French, unfortunately, although I think any country would probably had the same reaction. But it certainly casts a bit of a shadow over the French team at the moment, especially when they're trying to win the hearts and minds of their fans in their home country. I don't think it'll dampen too much the support, but it's definitely a distraction. It's a sideshow that you really don't want to have. Now, Chaleroux went out on a press conference and claimed that he said he was not a racist and sort of claimed innocence and said it was never a racially motivated attack. I'm not sure of all the details. I only know what we've been reading in the papers, but very interesting and very much the sort of thing that you don't really want to have happen on the eve of the World Cup. So I'm not sure. What do you think? Should he been included or not? Leave a comment down below. And I just think it's a hell of a distraction to have when it's on the eve of your biggest game. Then just talking about that game against New Zealand, there's also some mind games going on. I see Jonathan Dante has been sort of training with the teams, and even though he was ruled out of the game, it seems he may be fit. So we might be seeing a bit of mind games there from the French already against the All Blacks, and that should be quite interesting to see if he's actually selected. Mind games are going to be the order of the day for the World Cup, and I think we're going to see a lot more of them. And we're just going to stick with that game, the opening game on Friday night for the moment, because in the All Black camp, there's a bit of apprehension because Geordie Barrett is doubtful for the game as well with an injury. So, a lot of sort of doubt going through the All Blacks' minds. Will he, won't be. But this is the sort of angst that goes ahead of these big games, especially a World Cup, and especially where the All Blacks are at the moment. And, I think both teams are looking to probably exploit that bit of doubt. But if Geordie Barrett doesn't play, I think we all want to see the best players play at the World Cup. So we hope he's going to be fit for the game, because it really is a huge game on Friday night. And then to sort of make the New Zealand hearts pump a bit faster as well, former French lock Olivier Mann has come out and called this the weakest New Zealand All Blacks side ever at a World Cup. That certainly made headlines in New Zealand. It's a huge allegation. I'm not quite sure whether it's true or not. Time will tell. I suppose we will see how well they do in the World Cup. But they're certainly on the toughest side of the draw, and will have a huge 2 games, the game against France, and then obviously if they get out the pool, their game against whoever they place in the quarterfinals, Ireland, Scotland or South Africa, it's going to be huge as well. So Yeah, I don't know. Look, it makes waves. It's the type of thing that will probably the All Blacks will use as motivation. But it certainly adds some spice to the week, and I think we're in a very spicy week. We haven't really seen shots fired in other directions, but not too many at least. But this one, in this game, everyone's concentrating on this, and probably the biggest game of the World Cup, is the opening one, which is nice to see. It will set the tone for the World Cup, and I think we're all looking forward to see what happens on Friday night. Keeping with France, we've seen in reports that there is a possible airline strike in France, and this is not a new story, but it's been festering for a while. And this is unfortunately so French because they like to exploit these sort of things, and there's nothing you can really do. I remember being at the 2007 World Cup, and then before the final there was a railway strike, which made it almost impossible to get to the stadium. I ended up going to the stadium, I think, 5 hours earlier before the game, and taking a very expensive taxi back then to get to Stade de France. And I think that's part of the issues there. There's gonna, if you want to host a World Cup, you should be able to make sure that people can get to the World Cup. So I think there's some gnashing of teeth going along there, but obviously those who want to have the strike are trying to exploit the situation, and you can understand that as well. Just on the mind games again, I see there's already one Owen Doyle fired a shot in terms of South Africa. It's a long way from the South African game, but you can realize these attacks are going to be ramped up quite a bit going into the Ireland South African game. But already calling for people the refs to police the maul and all the forward pack, and I think there's going to be a lot of talk about South Africa's forwards going into that game. Obviously, the teams need to get past their initial games before that, and South Africa are concentrating on Scotland. But that's quite an interesting one as well. Sorry, guys, if you hear noises in the background, it's on my roof. I've got a bunch of hardy-dars here. South Africans will know how I won't say irritating, but how they can affect your early mornings and late nights. Hardy-dars overseas. Overseas viewers, I mean, if you go and Google hardy-dar, you'll understand. They make this wonderful, horrible noise, which is not the best to have around. Then heading off into the last couple of things, Owen Farrell, I see at his press conference, said he was wrong and he accepted his fate and called it a mistake. His tackle that got him the ban, that he'll miss England's first couple of games. Good on him to sort of admit that. He's still a great player. We still want to see him at the World Cup. And then, interestingly, at the tournament's opening press conference, Alan Gilpin, the CEO of World Rugby, was asked if they'd learned anything around the Owen Farrell disciplinary, which I think we all know was sort of became a bit of a farce at times with how it was run, and World Rugby had to appeal the decision to get the right decision made. So I think what we need, if you listen to Alan Gilpin, this is his answer. Typical politician's answer, not really much of an answer, but he has it anyway.
Hi there, I'm Alex Bywater, Daily Mail. Alan, can I ask you, there was a lot of confusion this summer for rugby fans about the disciplinary process, particularly around the Owen Farrell incident. Have sort of lessons been learned from World Rugby, and are you confident that there won't be repeats of that, obviously a big event like this?
Thanks, Alex. I think, yes, we're confident. I mean, I guess we're never complacent with these things. Obviously, we've introduced and implemented the foul play review bunker through Super Rugby and then into the summer games for Rugby World Cup warm-up matches. And that anytime you're introducing new processes and procedures, there's always going to be some learnings, and there has been. I think the key difference for us when we come into the tournament is that we get to control the process much more. So everything from the way the television pitches are shared with the relevant officials through to the disciplinary process is obviously all under one set of controls, and that gives us the confidence, I think, that we can make sure it's not confusing for players and it's not confusing for fans.
Then the final 2 points are just two little interesting snippets picked up on Twitter. The one was this, it's not really to do with the World Cup, but this is where we're heading. England, the RFU put out the tackle height picture to show clubs where the tackle height needs to be. And if you look at this picture, I'm sorry, but that's a recipe for disaster. You're asking for all sorts of concussions. You're asking for a lot of injuries, and I think everybody who in their right mind knows that this doesn't really work in rugby. So unfortunately, we're heading to that. And if rugby, really has to take a look at itself, this is one of the issues that needs to be sorted out, and common sense needs to prevail here. I'm not a sports scientist. I'm not somebody who can argue these things in terms of medical things, but I just know the trials that I've seen where they've lowered the tackle height like that. There's the propensity for a knee to come up and a knee to the head, and then you suddenly have more concussions. So I'm not quite sure this has worked, but this is adding to the entire debate around it. Let me know your views in the comments below. Lastly, pick these up on Twitter as well. The average age per Rugby World Cup squad. You can see South Africa is right at the top there with the most experienced squad, the oldest squad, and then Australia are the ones with the youngest squad. And I think that sort of goes to what I've said in other videos about Eddie, and what Jake White also said about Eddie planning for the Lions in the next World Cup. But it's just interesting to see the squads there. You see that South Africa and Ireland have got probably two of the oldest squads over there, and 27 seems to be the perfect age going on history for World Cup winning squads. Samoa also an old squad, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, Australia a very young squad as well. Then the other graphic, and then the other graphic being the homegrown percentage per squad. Interesting to see that there's only 4 squads that have 100% homegrown players. South Africa being one of them. The other 3 being the South American nations, Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. England are pretty close. So are Georgia, France pretty close as well. Australia pretty close. New Zealand as well. But then the team at the bottom that has the least is Samoa, probably because most of their players were born in New Zealand. There was a big exodus there. And Scotland are pretty low as well, Scotland and Japan. And you can see that as well in their squads. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, I suppose it all depends what you do on the field. As long as everything's inside the eligibility laws, that's all that really matters. It's always an interesting talking point though, and it's always nice to see. But I think at the moment, it's all these things that we talk about 3 days out from the action, and from Friday night, the action will take over, and really, really looking forward to this. So guys, yeah, let me know what you think of the concept. If there's anything you'd like me to address as well, you're welcome to put in the comments below. This is episode 2. Episode 3 will probably be on Thursday before the games, and then we'll try and do it 3 times a week as well from now on. Hopefully, if something big comes up, I'll bring up another extra episode as well. But thank you for watching, and really, watch the games, support rugby, and give us your views, and please subscribe to this channel if you can. Cheers.